Welcome to the channel, guys. My name is Jess. So after a slew of economic events have been suppressing the price of Bitcoin over the last week, buyers have stepped in to finally send the price flying over 58k resistance. The recent rally has placed Bitcoin on the verge of an explosive breakout. However, that is under the assumption that we have a bullish weekly candle close. So let's dive into the charts today to talk about how the recent price action translates over to the macro charts and some serious biases that we might need to challenge if Bitcoin has yet another failed rally. Before we get into all that though, make sure you guys smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to get regular Bitcoin analysis every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. If you're after even more content, be sure to check out my free Telegram for daily updates as well as crypto and economic news. And if you're interested in my VIP channel, you can get more details over here. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. So in case you guys missed it, let's start off with a little bit of context on the recent price action from Bitcoin before we dive into our analysis. So moving into the last 2-week period, Bitcoin has been traveling in quite a strong short time frame uptrend, characterized by these 3 points of contact here, starting at the range low at 52,500. And throughout that last week in particular, or the last 5 days, as Bitcoin approached and continued to reject off this level of resistance here at 58,500, we started to develop a bearish divergence. We had a decreasing amount of momentum while Bitcoin was retesting this level of resistance in an uptrend. So the formation of an ascending wedge pattern, and things weren't looking all that good. But the important thing to remember is that throughout that couple of days or that week period, the key levels of support that we had here supporting the bullish narrative on the short time frame were holding. So our 50 SMA was holding, our key uptrend was holding, as well as throughout the latter end of that week, this base of resistance over here at 57,500. So eventually, after the economic news sort of period ended and we had CPI data come out and PPI data come out, and Bitcoin had managed to hold those key levels, eventually we saw a rally. So we had a massive shift in bullish momentum over here, pushing the price out of this downtrend, and Bitcoin broke over 58k resistance and is now moving towards the next key level of resistance here at $61,000. You guys can see it a little bit better on the 12-hour chart. In terms of macro context, Bitcoin is still very much traveling in the descending channel formation, as you guys probably know. And now that we've had this recent rally, Bitcoin is really on the verge here of potentially experiencing a very large breakout. Now, before I get into all of that, let's start off with the short time frame analysis and talk about the key levels that we have here and key supports. And I'll elaborate that by going into the daily chart after. Before we get into any more analysis, guys, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor, Bitunix, where you can get 15% off all of your trading fees and up to $5,500 in sign-up rewards by creating your free account using the link down in my description box. Bitunix is an emerging cryptocurrency exchange committed to providing you with a secure, convenient, and highly functional trading and investment platform. Available across all countries as a non-KYC exchange, get global access to over 150 trading pairs with minimal fees on both spot and futures contracts. Join today to get $5,500 in sign-up rewards and get 15% off all of your trading fees by signing up using the link in my bio or by using the code 1GG3 when you create your account. So moving back over to the short time frame charts, we're on a 4-hour time frame here. The situation and what we need to see for bullish continuation is pretty simple here, guys. So while our key bullish validations remain intact, those being our short time frame uptrend that we've been in for the last 2-week period, our dynamic level of support at the 50 SMA on the 4-hour time frame, as well as our key horizontal support now newly established at 58,500. While we continue to hold those levels, the trend is your friend until it ends, and support is support until it's not. So the bullish narrative remains intact. Now, a key level of resistance here, as we just discussed, ends at 61,700 and begins here at 60,700, right? So as we approach that level of resistance, while we hold these key bullish, validations intact, Bitcoin should be able to break above resistance. Now, in doing so, we establish a bullish continuation on a 4-hour candle close above 61,700. And that is when, upon establishing this level as a base of support, Bitcoin will then move to consolidate between 61.7 and this next key level of resistance here that we have on the short time frame charts, starting at $63,800. Now, this is the same area that we rejected from all the way back at the end of August that resulted in a failure to sustain a bullish move above the midline of our macro descending channel and a retest of our range low. So it is a very, very strong level of resistance here. So that is the potential validations and the bullish scenario that we have on the short time frame charts. So the very first thing we need to look for is that close above this level of resistance here to establish that bullish continuation. Now on the flip side, if we do have a breakdown of our key levels of support over here, that is when Bitcoin will move into the next key level of I guess significance, that being $56,000. That is when we lose our short time frame uptrend, as well as this level of support over here, and including sell side liquidity, and we move into this next space and the prior low within our short time frame uptrend. So that is when Bitcoin will begin to develop a downtrend if we move below that level in establishing a lower low, right? We begin to travel in a downtrend. So that is the short time frame summarized in a nutshell. Now, as we approach this next key level of resistance here at 61,700, the break of which has a lot of significance. And to explain that, I'm going to move over onto the daily chart now. So this next level of horizontal resistance that we're approaching on the short time frame charts has a lot of significance on the daily time frame for a number of reasons. So the very first one we can see by looking at the midline of our massive descending channel structure, which is represented by that blue dotted trend line that we have moving throughout the entire descending channel, right? So historically, that midline has acted as a very, very strong dynamic level of resistance, where breaking above on the daily time frame generally has resulted in a bullish or a continuous bullish rally that takes Bitcoin to retest the range high resistance of that macro descending channel. So that at this particular point in time would be somewhere between $68,500 to $69,000. So there have been some failed breaks in the past, or failure to continue that bullish rally. First of all, being over here in April, and secondly, being most recently in August, where we broke above the midline on a daily time frame, had an exceptionally bullish daily candle, and then rejected from $65,000. Now, from that most recent rejection, what we can map out is a developing downtrend that represents the increasing selling pressure that we have moving into this upper half of the descending channel structure. So we have a high over here and we have a lower high over here. Now, this exact trend line has another level of confluence with our horizontal level of resistance. So that tells us that breaking above $61,800 on the daily time frame breaks us above the midline of our macro descending channel structure, as well as the downtrend developed by that increasing selling pressure experienced over the last couple of months in this upper half of the channel, and highly increases Bitcoin's probability to then have quite an explosive bullish rally that should at the very least take us to retrace this next level of resistance here established by that prior high in this downtrend, and that is at $65,000. If we were to have an extended bullish rally here, what we need to see is a daily close above that level of resistance at 65K, but also on the short time frame, that would first be signaled by a 4-hour close above the upper level of buy-side liquidity here from that rejection at 64,966. So that 4-hour candle close should be the start of the establishing of a continuous bullish rally, where when we break above that prior high there, Bitcoin starts to develop an uptrend, right? Where we have higher highs rather than lower highs opposed to this segment of price action. And that is when we're very likely to then move into the next level of key significance, which is the upper range of our macro descending channel. So we have a little bit more evidence that supports this bullish narrative on the weekly time frame, and that can be seen by pulling up the RSI. So let's move over onto the weekly time frame and put away that little drawing. So if we move over and take a look at the RSI, throughout the last 6-month period, as Bitcoin has been consolidating within this descending channel structure, we've seen a consistent drop in momentum. So we've had decreases in buying pressure represented by those lower peaks there, and increasing selling pressure throughout that exact same period represented by those lower lows. Now, if we take a look at what this most recent Bitcoin rally has done, is on the weekly time frame, if we manage to close our weekly candle where it currently is, so you know it's in 2 days time, so we still have a little bit of price action to develop, but what we can see is that on the weekly chart, this most recent rally has taken the RSI to actually retest the downtrend that we have been developing for the last 6-month period. Now, a breakout of this downtrend is exceptionally bullish, as it suggests a massive positive shift in momentum, particularly if the RSI ends up closing, that weekly candle close ends up being above the prior high developed here in that downtrend, because that suggests that momentum is shifting into an uptrend rather than, just breaking out and still being in a lower high, right? And that would tell us that Bitcoin here has a very high probability of moving in to retest this range high over here with massive bullish momentum. That would be very, very positive. So it looks like on the macro charts and in terms of the bullish case scenario, things are actually shaping up really well for Bitcoin, particularly if we do get that bullish RSI in the next 2 days on that weekly candle close, and if on the daily time frame we do actually manage to break above this trend line over here. So in 2 days, we have our weekly candle close, and in 4 days, we have our interest rate decision, which is going to be huge, right? If that is bullish, Bitcoin is very well positioned here for a very extensive bullish rally that takes us at least to the range high of our macro descending channel. We can also see on the daily time frame, I forgot to bring it up before with you guys, that we have broken out of the corresponding RSI downtrend here, developed from July, from that range high retest over here. So it does look like in approaching the trend line and testing that level of resistance when Bitcoin actually does, if RSI remains positive and we sustain above that downtrend here, we have a higher probability here of seeing that breakout here on the daily time frame. So things are looking quite good. But that brings us to the alternative situation. So what happens if Bitcoin does end up rejecting from this downtrend and rejecting from 61,800 and moving downwards? How far can Bitcoin go before we start to develop and fall into the bullish case scenario and things start to look bad once again? So I already spoke about on the short time frame that we continue to be short time frame bullish until we fall below our key, short time frame bullish validation. So that being our 58K support, our current level of short time frame uptrend, and our dynamic level of support here being the 50 EMA or SMA, whatever you guys want to call it. But we begin to get high time frame bearish or no longer high time frame bullish when we fall below this level of support here at $56,000. That is really truly the key level of support that we have before we see a retest of the range low over here, or this horizontal level that corresponds with our range low here at $53,400. We can see that it acts as a level of support here when we take a look at the range low retest in July, as well as where our candle closed in August and again in September, right? So it has consistently acted as a level of support there. Now, this is when it gets a little bit interesting. So we know that Bitcoin's in a descending channel formation. We know that we've had a developing downtrend here from these highs and lower highs consistently over the last couple of months. Now, if we take that and, ignore the descending channel structure for a moment, we can see that actually within this last 3-month period, Bitcoin has begun to sort of consolidate in what I would call a bearish descending channel, a descending triangle structure, right? Where we've entered into from the top side. We've seen repetitive building in selling pressure and decreasing in buying momentum moving throughout this level of this period of, consolidation while we hold this level of support. So at some point, what this structure tells us is if we have repetitive tests and retests of this horizontal level of support over here, at some point we are going to have a bearish break. So if we invert the chart, for example, it is a very, very clear pattern. We have seen it time and time again in Bitcoin in the opposite way. We've seen ascending triangle formations consistently lead to very bullish breaks on Bitcoin. But what we have developing here is the exact opposite of that, where breaking through this level here and eating through that support wall that we have on the downside, we see a bearish break. Going back to the regular charts for a moment, we can also see that if we fall below $56,000 and go to retest that next key level of support down here at $54,000, what we would also do is have a bearish breakdown of another triangular pattern that we've been developing within the structure, the symmetrical triangle formation, which is also another bearish formation, guys, because we've seen our very first retest of that structure at the top side. So we've developed it in a way that suggests a bearish continuation if we break down from that lower trend line there, and particularly a bearish continuation if we fall below the prior low developed there on that lower trend line at 52,600, that low retest seen all the way back in September. So what these chart patterns are telling us is that if we see a breakdown of $56,000, that takes us down to retest this red level of support over here at 53,400. Because of the way that the charts have developed, suggesting a bearish continuation here at that retest, we have a quite high likelihood of actually breaking down from that horizontal level of support and testing sell side liquidity here at $49,000 rather than a bounce and recovery, purely because of the pattern structures. And it tells us that if we do get the breakdown, it is very likely to be quite a bearish break that takes us to, at the very least, test that sell side liquidity or potentially even fall lower. Now let's not forget though, sell side liquidity, that 49k is a huge level of support. We can see it on the weekly time frame. If we pull up the Ichimoku cloud, we know that that $49,000 level of support is literally the key barrier and the key marker for whether or not Bitcoin remains in a macro uptrend compared to, you know, the start of the macro bear market. So if we pull up the Ichimoku, for example, we can see that if we get another range low retest and rejection from that level there, Bitcoin falls into the leading span A or under the leading span A into the cloud at that retest of that red level of support. And that tells us we move into the base, which is the leading span B. That's generally what happens when we move into the cloud. We've got to test the base of the cloud. And at the base of this cloud here, we have a massive level of support, which upon breaking down is when we enter the bear market. So again, even more kind of confidence and confirmation that that is when that really bearish case scenario begins. So Bitcoin is really in quite a critical position right now, where we either see a break here of that downtrend, right, that we have developing on the daily chart, or failing to sustain above 56k, we potentially risk a high time frame, you know, correction here to at least see that level of support there. So just because we've tested $49,000 doesn't mean we're entering a bear market. I do want to make that distinction in case, you know, anyone got lost along the way. While we hold that level of sell side liquidity, that leading span B, and the level of sell side liquidity itself is going to act as a really strong level of support. But just kind of like giving you guys a little bit of context on really how important this next period of price action really is. Alrighty guys, that is all the analysis that I have for you today. So I know the video ended on a little bit of a bearish note, but the charts are developing in quite a bullish way and suggestive of high time frame bullish continuation if we do get those validations that we talked about. It is just very interesting how the charts are developing to represent how critical that 56k level of support really is. So if you guys enjoyed the video or you learned something, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're looking for even more content, be sure to check out my free Telegram for daily updates as well as crypto and economic news. And if you're interested in my VIP channel, you can get more details over here. VIP gives you exclusive access to my personal trading setups with exact entry points, targets, and stop losses. I am having a sale right now on VIP memberships. You can get 15 to 30% off all of your memberships if you message me before the end of the day. Hope you guys have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.